Hey yo, this is a Tuesday toy photography tutorial, and this video might be a little boring. It's about editing. I've had a handful of requests from all the platforms about editing, and I feel like in general it's just a popular question. When I first started out, I always was curious about how people edited their photos. So I do actually love watching Photoshop videos and just seeing different people's different techniques. I want this to be mostly basic things in Photoshop. I wanted to keep the shot a pretty simple shot, simple idea, simple lighting to really show like the basic edit process. So let's jump in. Because I did shoot this in RAW, the first thing I'm gonna do is mess with the exposure settings, the highlights, and the shadows. Also the color temperature. After a while, you kind of get the same settings and you can actually save them and just kind of quickly apply the setting. But it's also nice to just go through it again every now and then to make sure you really like the way the settings are. So kind of going back and forth with different ones. Here's the curves tab, another way to mess with the exposure and just kind of tune it to how you really want it. My goal here isn't really to make it the final image. This is still camera raw. It's not really Photoshop yet, so I'm just tuning the image to be ready to edit right after this. So now we officially opened our image in Photoshop, and I usually like to get a general crop just to know what space I'm working with. Recently my favorite's been 4x5, either vertical or horizontal. Kind of take up the most space when people are scrolling on Instagram. So pretty much everything that we're going to be working with is up here under the adjustments tab in the top right. The curves one is usually my favorite to start out with, because it really just helps set the mood. When you raise this bottom left handle, it increases the minimum darkness, so nothing is pure black in this image. So I lowered some of the shadows and raised some of the other highlights to make kind of this S curve, which is a very popular line on the curves adjustment. Also in the curves layer, you can go to different colors, and each of those do something different as well. Under the blue tab, if you decrease the highlights of the blue, all your whites start to become a little yellow tinted. And if you raise the blue on the bottom, it's going to increase the blues in the shadows. The same with red. If you decrease the highlight in the red, it becomes like a cyan. And then I usually like to bump the mids in the red a little bit just to add some of that color. Remember, this is all personal preference. Unless there's an ugly green tint that I don't want, I don't usually mess with the green tab. I don't always use this one, but it is nice to tune more of what you're going for. So here I'm raising the shadows again to kind of give that faded look. Another adjustment layer that I really love using is the gradient map. This sets the image to what color you want your darkest parts of the image and what color you want the brightest parts of the image to be. So I usually start off with this like blue, cyan, and orange, because that's like a cinematic feel. But the trick is to change your blending mode. So soft light's usually the most popular one that I use, and then I decrease it a ton so you can see like this is before and this is after. Like it really helps set like that cinematic tone. Do I do this for all the shots? No, but I usually like to try it to see how it works. This next adjustment layer that I'm adding is the color lookup, which allows you to add LUTs, which stands for lookup table. And what these do is change what the colors in your image to something else. So they're all pre-assigned, and you just click it and it changes your color. These are really popular in video editing, so I have a lot of different ones that I like to cycle through, but Photoshop has its own presets, which some of them are pretty cool. And so this one that I use is called Film Stock, and you can see that it gives a pretty cool contrast, and I usually lower the opacity as well to not make it pop too much. After doing all this, I pop on an exposure layer and kind of just mess around with it. This one is usually pretty strong, and so I don't always overdo it, or I try not to. Kind of just mess with it a little bit, see if things look better with different slides and amounts or whatever. So here I messed with it until it became a little brighter overall, but still kept the tone that I was going for. And one of the final steps is the export. Since all of my photos, or most of them, go on Instagram, my favorite is to save it at 1080 width. So depending on your crop, it's gonna adjust, but 1080 width, it balances out and it gives you like almost maximum resolution for Instagram. I did end up retaking this picture without all the extra stuff in the background just because I wanted it super clean. Hope this made sense, and maybe you can apply it to other programs if you don't use Photoshop. Remember to go create and inspire, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.